I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms or euphemistic language. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. And it gets worse with every generation. For some reason, it just keeps getting worse.
So what is political correctness? Let's ask the folks over at MTV what they think.
Political correctness is avoiding words or behaviors that exclude, marginalize, or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against. Basically, treating people with respect.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, if political correctness and respect are the same thing, then why do we need political correctness? Well, the short answer is they're not the same thing. Respect is something from a bygone era, it seems. A gut instinct, if you will. It's something you were free to exercise or not exercise. In short, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But you were still free to speak out against ideas which you did not identify with. Versus political correctness shuts down those discussions. It's all about controlling the language. You can't speak out against popular opinion. Any kind of opposition to an idea is labeled.
Please, it is not anti-woman just to talk about women.
Rather than being proven wrong, you will simply be labeled racist or sexist or homophobic or etc. It's all about controlling the language. It reinforces this ever-present victim mentality here in the United States that it's basically just a game of who can out-label the other person. It's not about being right. It makes us blind. Look at what's happening in Sweden with the migrants in the ensuing rape of women and even some children, I believe. We're just supposed to be blind to these things. Nobody is really allowed to speak out against them because they'll be labeled sexist, Islamophobic, racist. They might even be punished by law enforcement. And political correctness is so poisonous that what is happening to these women over in this country, these women still believe that they don't need men to protect them. I mean, yes, a woman should certainly know how to defend herself because there's not always going to be a man around. But the fact that these men cannot step in and do anything about this because political correctness has emasculated them is a horrible, horrible thing, and it's a shame.
Professor, if you really believe in this curative of yours and its benefits, why do you peddle it from the back of a wagon like a quack medicine man?
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, this morning you had Chester up there testifying to a lot of lies. Now, there wasn't a thing wrong with him, but you still had him believing that he needed your curative.
It's true I've resorted to somewhat shady means, frontier salesmanship. It's equally true I knew that young man had no ailments, but it was a harmless deception.
It's not harmless if people believe those lies.
Now, how can we fight this? Okay, I don't expect anybody to listen to me, but I try to fight it every day by just not being politically correct. If I have something to say, I say it, and if it offends somebody, well then, they're just going to have to deal with it. I mean, whether you like it or not, the sun comes up, the sun goes down.
You can't even call these people handicapped anymore. They'll say, we're not handicapped, we're handy-capable. These poor people have been bullshitted by the system into believing that if you change the name of the condition, somehow you'll change the condition. Well, hey, cousin, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
One of the most unfortunate things about the widespread endorsement of PC culture is how our society now sees any kind of opinion or view that is not our own. We see it by default. It's wrong. It's sexist or it's homophobic. As long as it's in opposition, to ours, it's automatically. It's met with such hostility.
All units, we have a code red. Do not attempt to move or we'll be shooting ourselves.
Nobody talks as to have their mind changed or their opinion influenced. They go into these discussions with their mind made up, and when they're backed into a corner, they just lash out with labels. It's hate speech that you're against them. People like Anita Sarkeesian are trying to make it so you can't disagree with anyone because that becomes harassment. Being called a liar when you are in fact one is these people want these things to be harassment.
When a businessman sits down and negotiates a deal, the first thing he does is to automatically assume that the other guy is a complete lying prick who's trying to fuck him out of his money. So he's got to do everything he can to fuck the other guy a little bit faster and a little bit harder. And he's got to do it with a big smile on his face.
And so in closing, I want to leave you with a little bit of history here. I'll try to make this quick. Galileo Galilei, okay, an astronomer. I believe he's also a physicist, among many other things. I think he lived in the 1500s, 1600s. He was an advocate for the Copernican theory. It was believed at the time that the Earth sat in the center of the solar system. The sun moved around it. In fact, I think everybody thought the Earth was the center of the universe. And Galileo, had reason to believe, well, wait a minute, I think the Earth moves and the sun doesn't. The sun is at the center. But he had people telling him that he was wrong. Of course, we know he's right now, which is the beautiful thing. But can you imagine? At the time, he was accused of heresy. Like, they had ways to shut these things down. And they told him that if he was going to talk about this, he had to be hypothetical about it. He couldn't argue its truth. Ultimately, whether he meant to or not, he ignored that. And he ended up under house arrest in his own home, which is kind of akin to today when somebody puts a toe out of line. We expect them to vanish. We expect them to lose their job, to lose their family. And it's just insane. We expect people to find the edge of the earth and jump off it into oblivion. And I think that's kind of similar. You can also see how it's similar to the Nazi book burning and bunch of other things, the control. It's all about control. Not what is right, but control.
We've been hearing a lot about systemic change, and that makes me really happy because I think that that's really how we have to do this. And so one of those approaches is I think that the online social media sites and the places in which we are engaging on these large platforms really need to step up and change the way that their systems operate. So it's not enough that they simply put Band-Aids on the problem areas, that they need to completely reimagine what their systems look like in order to build sites that actively deter online harassment, that make it harder to do this.
And that's all political correctness is. But they won't say that, because if they did, then we'd have a problem on our hands. So people who advocate for it will sail their ship under the banner of free speech. They'll claim that they're expanding on it. But the words that they're adding are things like mansplain, which is probably what this is going to be considered. Oh, it's a man. He's mansplaining. Well, anyways, that's my ramble for the day. Let me know what you think of PC culture. All right, YouTube, this is Brock Shake. I'm out of here.
No, Andy. Don't never apologize to a woman. I say, if you got an argument with a woman, stand up and fight it out.
Well, finding out's what put you behind them bars, Otis.
But she threw a dish at me.
Well, you swung a leg of lamb at her.
But I missed her.
Yeah, but you hit her mother.
Yeah. Right in the mouth.